Or not.
The conversation.
There we go.
Okay, folks, we are on the air, and I want to welcome all of you this evening, this nice warm spring day. And would you like to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mary, could we get a roll call?
Olson.
Here.
Collins.
Here.
Johnson. Here. Kellum.
Here.
Kopczynski.
Here.
Coburn.
Here.
That was a good choice. That was lucky to find.
Okay, and so with that, we have a couple special presentations this evening, and our first is from our Albany Visitors Association, and this is over the package travel. And we have Jimmy Luke, the Executive Director of Albany Visitors Association, and Melody Johnson, yes, package travel.
So, there we go. So do I need to tell you my first and last name and spell it for you?
No, we all.
Okay. And it's written right up there.
Yeah.
So this isn't quite the presentation that I had planned a couple of weeks ago. Considering some of the questions that have come up recently, I thought I'd add a little extra information here. One of the things that you might notice here, there's 28.8 million overnight stays in Oregon, 5 million overnight stays in the Willamette Valley. These are numbers that come from Travel Oregon in studies that are done for them. This one happens to be the Longwood International Study. And so what's the purpose of the trip of people coming to Oregon or to the Willamette Valley? There's 53% that are VFRs. Anybody know what a VFR is? It's a visiting friends and relatives. 53% of the people that come to the Willamette Valley are here to visit friends and relatives. 37% is marketable, meaning that we have some say in what they see and do. And 10% is business. So people coming to one of the industries or people coming to talk to someone about starting a new business, that sort of thing. That would also be some of the events that happen at the fairgrounds. Dog shows, that sort of thing, would fall into the business category. So while people are here, they're spending $584 million. And 30% of that money is going to lodging, 26% to food and beverages, 20% to retail, and that number is going to be affected a bit by a new store that's opening out at the mall in June. The Hobby Lobby is probably going to affect that number quite a bit. And then 15% is transportation and 9% is recreation. And so where are our guests coming from? 61% are already Oregonians. They're just traveling around. And 15% come from Washington, 10% from California, a couple of 2% from Arizona. So when we're looking at this and we're thinking about where our marketing dollars are being spent, we're looking at spending them on, for instance, Sunset Magazine, the edition that covers Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, or Northwest Travel Magazine, which covers this region. So this is good information for us to analyze on a regular basis. So what kind of accommodations are those visitors looking for? 29% stay in motels, 20% stay in hotels. So that's about 50% that are staying in lodging properties. Campgrounds is 20%, and this one I found kind of interesting. Only 14% of the friends and relatives are staying in non-paid locations, which means only 14% of those 53% are staying with their friends. So friends and relatives begin to smell after 5 days, I think is what that saying goes. That kind of proves it, doesn't it? So what kind of activities and experiences are people looking for when they're here? I found the first one a little bit odd. It says beaches and waterfronts, but basically rivers, lakes, that sort of thing here in Lynn County. Camping, shopping, national parks, fine dining, hiking, swimming, landmarks and historic sites. So we don't have Abe Lincoln slept here, but we do have historic architecture, we do have covered bridges, those kinds of things. And this is a 3-part slide, so here's part 2 of that slide. Fair, exhibition, festivals, casinos, breweries, museums, fishing. Interesting, fishing comes before the bars, discos, and nightclubs. Art galleries, biking, and biking is one that we really want to keep an eye on because it's a growing industry, and it's something that Travel Oregon is really spending some big bucks on promoting for Oregon. The other really convenient thing for Albany is we're right in the middle of the very first scenic bikeway in the entire United States. It starts south of Portland, it runs to Eugene, and goes right through downtown Albany. So here's the last part of that slide, what people are looking for while they're here, what kind of experiences. Concerts, theater, golf, rafting, rodeo, that's an interesting one. So this is kind of along the same idea. What are the activities of special interest that folks are looking for? Historic places was the first on that list again. And cultural activities. Boy, do we have some cultural activities when you think of the carousel. That kind of fits both of those, history and culture. And then winery tours, wine tasting, and exceptional culinary. I can almost get that out. So there was a question the other day about whether we have a website or not, the Visitors Association. We have a website. I've been here for 15 years. We've had a website ever since I got here. It was before I got here. We've redone it like 4 times, and we just launched our newest version of it. But these are some of the statistics from that website. Lodging previews of the lodging page were 3,877 people have looked at that page since we launched it, or since the first of the year, I guess it is. Group facilities, 1,088 people have looked at that page since the first of the year. The most popular things to download from that site are the Seems Like Old Time guide, and we have downloaded that 1,022 times. Event spaces, 855 times has been downloaded, and Covered Bridge Route Tour has been downloaded 358 times so far this year. If you look down below, it tells you what those same statistics were last year. We're really on track to meet or beat those statistics from last year. This is our new website, a screen capture of it. Someone had asked if it had lodging properties on it. If you look at the center of the top gold bar there, it says places to stay. Yes, places to stay is the centerpiece in that top gold bar, which takes you directly to a lodging page, which looks like this, lists all of the lodging properties in the Albany area and has pictures of most of them. That page that we talked about of meeting and conference spaces, this is what that looks like. The top thing on the list there is the Fair and Expo Center. And that page had been downloaded how many times? 380 sometimes so far this year. This is that Seems Like Old Times that had been downloaded so many times. One of our most popular pieces. This is the visitors that have come to the Visitors Association so far this year. 4,983 people have been in. We've had 3,790 phone calls. The kiosk that we operate out at the San Am Rest area has had 10,784 people that have visited there for a cup of coffee and some travel information. They tell me that the most requested thing there is the Covered Bridges and the Historic Homes brochures. And we've given away 28,588 brochures so far. So Lynn County Travel Impacts, what are they spending this money on? And this one comes from Dean Runyon and Associates. Mostly it's on food, retail sales, then arts and entertainment, and local transportation, food from stores, and the last thing that shows up here on the list is accommodations. So this one is just the most requested information. Again, it's the Albany Historic District's Lynn County Covered Bridges, the Densel Carousel Project, Talking Water Gardens, that one's a huge one, and the Willamette Valley Biking Trails. This shows the impact of what visitors are spending, and I thought it was kind of interesting because if you've looked at that chart on transit room tax, and if you were to draw a graph from it, it would follow this line almost perfectly. Peaking out in 2007, 2008, then dropping off when the recession or the economic slump hit and started building back up, and we're on track to top what we did in 2007, 2008. Same sort of graph, only showing what hotels and motels have taken in. This comes from Oregon Travel Barometer, and it was posted in February of this year, and it says the Oregon State lodging trends continue to show positive growth versus February of a year ago. Lodging demand is up 3.2%, and lodging revenue is up 6.9%. The second bullet on there, the sub-bullet, is the Willamette Valley experienced the highest growth in lodging demand and revenue versus February of a year ago. The lodging demand here in the Willamette Valley was up 7.6%, and the lodging revenue was up 11.9%. This shows the taxes that are paid by our travelers that are coming through. The top bar is the state taxes that they pay. State and local, or state taxes, excuse me. The bottom bar is the local tax, which pretty much lines up with what's collected on the transit room tax. It looks like it's right about $0.8 million, so it lines up with that almost perfect. So in one of the other slides, touring was mentioned, and about 23% of the people who are doing marketing trips like to do touring. That can be tours of wineries or food tours, that sort of thing. But it can also be the package tour program that we have been working on for the last year. About a year ago, we hired Melody Johnson to be a consultant and help us get ready to go to a couple of package travel shows. One of them was in LA, and one of them was in Washington, Tacoma, Washington. And she did an excellent job of getting us prepared. Melody has been in the tourism business for about 30 plus years, and has worked in several different phases of that, working, having a very successful hotel herself, and then working on putting together, she was a tour operator. She has helped put together culinary tourism, which was the first culinary tourism program in the U.S., and we're so very fortunate to have her working for us, putting this together, and I'm going to turn it over to her and let her tell you about our experiences, and she's promised not to tell too many stories about me.
No promises. Please work. There we go. And go over here to slideshow from there. We go. Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members, for having me here tonight. I want to tell you that I'm only 39, but I've been in the industry for 30 years, okay? So he wasn't supposed to really tell you that. Which button?
Oh, it's right here. Just the arrow.
Oh, okay.
Down arrow. Down arrow. There you go.
There you go. So I'm going to make this very, very quick because I've only got a few minutes. But I want to review with the council, and I apologize if a couple of you have already heard this, but I want to review exactly what package travel is. because this kind of follows what Jimmy has just showed you, except it's flipped. A tour operator, the first thing that they are interested in and absolutely must have is lodging. We cannot bring a tour operator cannot bring a tour anywhere without having a place to stay. So that's number one. The second thing is food and beverage. There is not one visitor in the entire world that does not eat, right? And you know yourself, when you travel, you eat. Whether it be at a farmer's market, a restaurant, at a food cart, it doesn't matter. And even if you're staying with family, friends, you still eat out at least once. And the third thing, of course, is transportation. They've got to get here, and they've either got to get here through airplanes or trains or motor coaches. So those are the three components that really a tour operator looks at when they're putting together their tour. And of course, why are we going there? Why are we coming to Lynn County? We're coming because of your incredible attractions. So last but not least, is the second most popular thing a visitor does is shop. Retail is so important. So we've got some major components there. And I would be remiss in telling you that festivals and events are on the increase. Tour operators are looking for, they've done the Rose Festival, they've done the California thing, and now they're looking for what we call hometown festivals. And guess what? We got a couple of them that we need to talk about. So in your packets that I'm going to be giving you later on is explanations of all these slides. And I have packets for every one of the council members, plus you, Mary, and of course the mayor. And in that is a 4-page document on alphabet soup. And the only reason I bring this up is because this is changing every day because our industry is growing so fast. So I don't, the next time I come, I expect you to have it all memorized, and we'll have a little test. So I'm just kidding, of course. So what are the benefits to the community? And I'm sorry you didn't hear that cash register because it's very, very important. And I do want to talk about this. When I come into a community, or when my people come into a community, the one thing that we do is we focus on local businesses. And that is extremely important. Why? Because that's what helps all of us live here, or live in whatever area we're on. So the industry itself, not only us, but the industry itself focuses on the local businesses. We're not going to be promoting somebody in California, we're going to be promoting them right here. We're going to talk a little bit about new money. I'd like to have someone in the council bring out a dollar bill, or a dollar bill would work. Anybody, just a dollar bill. You just need one or two.
Don't carry cash.
No, mayor makes the big bucks.
I should have warned you, Sharon. Sorry about that. On that dollar bill is a number, and it should be anywhere from 1 to 12. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, you know number is? Can you see? Sorry, Sharon. 12? You got a 12? Okay. You see it?
On the little black number,
Yeah.
not the long. Yep, I got a 12.
You got a 12. Okay. Well, I'm sorry that you have
here's a
12s,
1.
but that's okay. What I really was hoping for was somebody with the number from 1 to 5. What those numbers are, is that your federal, you got one? Good.
Got the 1.
That's a Federal Reserve Bank number. And that number tells you where that dollar bill came from. When I did the presentation for the Visit Lynn County this afternoon, somebody had a 5. And what that was, that's Richmond, Virginia. So that means, ladies and gentlemen, that dollar bill did not grow legs and it did not walk here. It didn't grow wings and it didn't fly. How did it get here? It got here with a human being. And I would venture to guess, 9 times out of 10, that a visitor brought that dollar bill. So the point that I'm making here is tourism, I don't care what form of it, is a very important economic driver. And I probably don't have to tell you that, but I am anyway. So room nights and what it means to you. Let's talk about that for a minute. I want you to imagine that I am a tour operator, of which I am, but I am bringing to you a motor coach full of 30 people. I want you to keep that number in mind, 30 people. As a tour operator, I have just rented somewhere in this city, Albany, at least 20 rooms. Now here's the caveat. They don't stay one night. They are And the reason being is because they're driving right through. We haven't marketed for doing that, but that's one of the reasons why people are saying, well, they only stay one night. That's because we haven't approached them and told them what else there is to do, which we're doing right now. So, but the point I'm making is the room nights are very, very important because that's your TRT tax. That's what goes back into tourism programs that support this industry that's in this area. I'll talk a little bit about the dollar amount per passenger because I know as elected officials, this is very, very important. What is your return on investment? I just attended the Governor's Conference on Tourism, and Greg Eckhart, who is the he is the manager of the Asiatic area, and he has brand new statistics. It is $300 per person per day that a tour operator brings into your community. Now I want you to do the math. 30 people on a bus, $300 a day, and we don't do any itineraries for less than 3 nights. I just don't do it. First of all, it's not economically feasible. How much did that tour bus bring in? 3 nights, 30 people. Do the math. Any guesses? $27,000 is what's just been dropped in your community. Why? That is new money. Remember the slide that Jimmy talked about, how Oregon is #1, Washington's under? We love those visitors, absolutely, but that's not new money. That's recycled money. That's coming from Washington State into Oregon, and you go to Washington State, all you're doing is exchanging. But we didn't have a motor coach from California or Arizona or back east. That's new money. That's $27,000 that's brand new, that's just been minted. And the last point that I want to make is it's free advertisement for you. We have 30 people. How many of you have smartphones? I know a couple of you do. And you've got iPads and you've got cell phones and etc. So if you're having a good time, I would venture to guess that you are probably telling somebody, right? Maybe it's just your partner that's with you. Nevertheless, you're telling someone. We have proven that on a motor coach, those 30 people, if they're having a good time, if they're having an experience that they've never had before, they are going to tell at least 10 people. So what have you got? You have just got 300 ambassadors to your community, and it's cost you nothing. In fact, they're paying us. So those are the things that I really would like to leave with you. The second thing, keep forgetting how to do the button. So I want to bring the council up on where we are right now, and all of this information are in your packets. First of all, we did the feasibility study for Albany and Lynn County. We did it in about 16 days in 3 different trips. One time it got snowed out, but we won't count that. We completed the feasibility study. We identified 7 categories out of 18 that we wanted to work on first round. I will tell you that Lynn County qualified for 14 out of those 18 broad-based categories. Those categories are what tour operators look at, whether it be multi-generational, cuisine, arts and artisans, soft adventure. And that's our Bible. That's how we contact or connect with these tour operators. The next thing we did is we designed 8 itineraries that was designed and all of the corresponding tasks that were completed. That looks really simple, ladies and gentlemen, but let me tell you, there's hours of work there. And in your package, you're going to see that. You're going to see first the itinerary that we designed. Those, I think, is 4 days, 3 nights. Then the next page, you're going to see the description that we write. And the third phase of it is to actually do the contact list. That is so very important because every supplier that's included in those itineraries, we have records of. We have to, because when we sell a tour, we've got to be able to go back to these businesses and actually work with them and get their pricing and et cetera. Then we designed, we put all those descriptions on the website. Now, I learned about a couple of websites today that I wasn't aware of before, but I do a little bit of research to see if we can't put these descriptions. The reason I say descriptions and not itineraries is that I used to be a tour operator. Well, I still am, but I don't do commercial anymore. But anyway, I used to be a tour operator. I can't tell you how many itineraries I stole. They did all the work. I just took them and ran with them. The one thing I don't want that happen is here, because we want to keep track of every motor coach, every tour operator that we're working with. So we just put the descriptions, not... The next thing that we do is we design the profile sheet. This is the sheet that we literally passed out hundreds at these trade shows through appointments and just communication. They're also in your packet. The last thing we did is we did the memberships for the tour associations. We did all the trade show reservations. Travel arrangements were completed. So when Jimmy got off the plane in Los Angeles, I handed him, he got to the convention center, I literally handed him a 3-ring notebook that was his Bible for the next 5 days. All the appointments, all the tour operators that I wanted him to knock down in the middle of the aisleways and make sure that he gets Lynn County and Albany's information. I want to say 2 things about these itineraries. Number 1, ladies and gentlemen, 3 nights. I don't do anything unless it's 3 nights. That's number 1. Number 2 is those itineraries have to be experiential. They've got to be special, because the tour operator has to turn around and resell that itinerary to 40 people that they may or may not ever know. So there's got to be something special. Let me give you an example. One of the things that we're doing, some of these you'll recognize, one of the things that we're doing is we're doing a covered or a white tablecloth catered dinner, candlelight, in the covered bridge in Sweet Home in the park. Now that is something that Joe Blow from Arkansas cannot do on his own. Why? Because it's special. It's that hook that's going to get that tour operator. I do want to add, and Jimmy asked me to mention this, one of the things that we're doing for next year is we are taking some of the components out of these tours and that individuals can do. I'll be working with the AVA in designing some marketing campaigns for the individual travelers to come on the website and actually do it on their own. That's going to help everybody, including our hotels. I'm hurrying and sharing as fast as I can. So next, and you've got all this, so I'm going to go really quickly. We researched all the tour information. That's 5 years of history of who these people are, who these tour operators are, what they're interested in, what tours they're bringing, where they're coming from. And all that information goes into our database, and that's what we base our appointment schedules on. I want to talk a little bit about that. At NTA, we have the opportunity to meet with 120 tour operators in 5 days. At Go West Summit, which is international, we had the opportunity to meet with 140 tour operators in 5 days. Ask me if I lost my voice. Yes, we did. Ask me if it was successful. It was overwhelmingly successful. We had, on the very first Albany has ever been to these shows, we had a 31 to 35% ratio in getting appointments. Ladies and gentlemen, that is unheard of. We're lucky. Most DMOs, most destination marketing organizations are very lucky if in 5 days they have 15 appointments. We had that in a day. And so it was very successful. So what happens after that? We start the follow-up procedure, which is absolutely imperative. We phone call, we email, we're building relationships, because that is what's going to get these people here. I'm going to tell you 2 stories, and then I'm going to turn this back over to Jimmy. I want to talk to you about country heritage tours. Some of you I talked to at the very beginning, and I did the presentation on what package travel was all about, and I said, the very first year, 2014, this year is going to be like building a house. This is going to be the foundation. Don't expect anything. By the time we get to the shows, which was in February, these tour operators have already got their product, their catalogs are done. They're done for 2015. They're looking for the following year. Well, I'm very happy to tell you that I lied to you. I lied to you big time. Because Country Heritage Tours, which is one of the premier tour operators in actually the United States, does tours only for quilts. And they take people all over the world for quilts. Guess what? Sisters, Oregon, has the best and largest quilt show in the United States. Where are you located? Right on the way to Sisters. So I did my due diligence, got a hold of this guy, and I looked at his itinerary, and I'm going, why would you be going to Sisters from Salem and coming back the same way? It did not make sense to me. I got on the phone to him, emailed him. He is now very excited because that day that he is coming back from Sisters, he is taking Route 20, one of your gorgeous, gorgeous scenic byways, and not only that, but the lady that owns the Quilt Loft she got so excited about this, they put together a consortium of all the quilters in Lynn County, and they are actually putting together a quilt trail to tie into the Sisters program and also Country Heritage Tours. Now, are we going to get him for overnight? Probably not, because it's a 2014 tour, but I can guarantee you we'll get him for next year. Earthbound Tours, another success story. This gentleman is a friend of mine, and we couldn't get an appointment. They get 60 appointments a day in 5 days. They're lucky if they can get coffee. So Earthbound Tours called me, and he said, hey, Mel, he says, I saw the incredible product for Lynn County and Albany. He says, I'm launching a new program. He said, I want to use those descriptions and soft launch a new business. Lynn County, Albany will be the only DMO, Destination Marketing Organization, and those tours that are going to be on this soft launch. What does that mean? I can't even begin to tell you. And last but not least is Wells Gray Tours. This is so exciting, and it's so funny. I need for you to put on imagination. I want you to think about a small table that's 6 feet long in a little tiny booth with only 2 chairs and a garbage can. And on one side of this table is our very soft-spoken, quiet Jimmy. Okay, and on the other side of that table is Roland Neve, who owns Wells Gray Tours. And he is very soft-spoken, and he doesn't say much, and he kind of has a stone face. Got the picture? Okay, now I'll turn it over to Jimmy.
She was very kind. She usually tells a lot more stories about me. Anyway, Roland sat down across from me, and he and I started talking. I showed him our profile sheet and started to try to find out what it was that his tours were based on, what they liked, and ask him if he was coming through our area. And it turns out that he does come through the Albany area. And by the end of our conversation there, he said, well, you could probably get some boxed lunches for us because we'll be going through. So I said, oh, okay. But by the time I got home, I think we were only home a couple of days, and I got an email from him. And he said, you know, I've been thinking about it. We could probably work in a tour of a historic home, a covered bridge, and maybe lunch in Albany. So by the time I wrote back to him, and I said, well, how about if you come and do the Monteith House, and I find a step-on guide for you, and you go through our historic districts. And he wanted to have lunch at either Sybaris, he said, or Novak's. And I said, Sybaris is closed at lunch, but we can certainly set you up for Novak's. He thought that would be okay. And I said, and then we'll send you out to, Larwood Bridge in your neighborhood.
Being constructed this summer, though.
Yeah.
It's not this summer, is it?
It's supposed to be done by September, and
Okay.
he was supposed to be here in September. So anyway, I said I would send him out to Larwood Bridge and have made arrangements for Bill Cockrell, I think it is. He's the president of the Oregon Covered Bridge Society. He's going to meet them out there, and he's going to do a personalized tour for them through the bridge, talk to them about the history of covered bridges. We're going to have a little bit of a reception out there for their folks, and we've also made an arrangement for them to go through a historic home in the downtown area, Kate's house. She doesn't know it yet, but her husband said it'd be okay. Uh-oh. So anyway, they're coming from the coast. They're going to be spending some time here. They already had rooms reserved up at the Oregon Gardens, so we don't get them for a stay this year, but I bet by the time they get home, they're going to be thinking of us as a place to stay and spend a few days for next year.
Wonderful. Yeah.
I just want to tell you that the Oregon Garden, this was the second year that they attended the National Tour Association. Remember what I said? I said it takes about 2 years for this to happen. She's worked very, very hard. She's been there 2 years, and now she's getting the tour buses in, and it happens. So last but not least, where do we go from here? Well, we have some pretty exciting things that are going on. One, we're going to be writing the descriptions for the last 7 categories. We're going to be writing 10 itineraries, including 3 for the festivals and events, and those are in order: your Hot Air Festival, Air and Art Festival. That's number 1. Number 2 is your holiday, your December, and that's going to be linked with no boundaries here now, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be linked with Shore Acres State Park, which is a huge Christmas draw, and at the other end, finalized, will be the Oregon Garden, which is actually doubling their display for the holidays. And the last one is Carriage Me Back out of Brownsville. Brownsville, right. Okay. So when I made this announcement to them, one of the ladies was sitting there, and she says, we're going to have to get more carriages. Okay, we can do that. International visitors are on the rise. I want to talk just a second about multi-regional itinerary collaborations, and the reason I'm saying this is because Oregon, who has been so closed, so to speak, with their itineraries and et cetera, realized that we've got wonderful wine products here. There's no doubt about it. But we're not big enough. We're not a Napa Valley. We're not France. We're not Bordeaux. We're not quite big enough. People kind of know about us, but not really. So Travel Oregon approached San Francisco, where Joe D'Alessandro is their CEO president. He used to be the CEO president here at Travel Oregon, and said, look, what if we blew the boundaries right out of the water? What if we put together a wine trail connecting Northern California and Oregon and marketed it to the world? And they unveiled that program at the governor's conference. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is going like wildfire. So with that in mind, if Oregon can do it, so can Lynn County. And that's exactly what we're doing. A visitor knows no boundaries. They don't even know when they go from state to state, let alone county to county. So we're looking at doing a regional program that will actually involve 10 destination marketing organizations throughout the entire state of Oregon. And this tour will actually showcase the parts of Oregon that are so beautiful, including Albany, that people overlook because they never get off of I-84 or I-5. The largest cities they're going to visit is Baker City, Pendleton, Auburn, and Klamath Falls. Those are the biggest cities.
And Albany.
And Albany. What did I say? Didn't I say Albany?
said
Oh, my
Auburn.
God. You can fire me if you want. Sorry, you think I'm a little nervous? Anyway, and it'll be about a 21-day tour. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're doing. That's what we've got on the plans. But I wanted to bring you up to date. We have been busy, and it's so exciting because what we started out with a year ago, which was a blank canvas, we're now starting to paint a really cool picture. And we will have these motor coaches here, and they will be bringing, and they're going to be staying more than one night. Thank you very, very much, Sharon. Thank you for letting me
Yeah.
go over my time. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, thank you, Melody. It's really exciting, and I really appreciate you put so much time into this, and I know, I know what all it took for when coming up with the itinerary, because she visited every single piece of tourism that can be offered, in our region, and to really make sure it was going to be a nice package that was going to be, presented. So I really appreciate all your experience that you've had to be able to put this
It was a
together.
pleasure on my part. These businesses that I have visited and got to know, they're my friends.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm so dedicated. This is,
Yeah.
I'd work for free if I could, but my husband wouldn't like that one bit. So,
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Is there any questions of Melody? So, okay. All right. Thank you, Melody, and thank you, Jimmy. So, yeah. It's great. Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
And I try to hurry, Sharon.
So, no, don't worry. So,
Thank you.
Is there a need for more motel rooms?
Jimmy, you got a question from Dick.
I don't think there is at this point.
You got all you need, okay.
Okay, so next on the agenda is another special presentation, and I was really excited about this, and looking forward to the council to kind of have this little surprise. And who would like to come forward from Helping Hands? The Board of Directors, and John, would you kind of like to, there's a microphone over there, or even the main one should pick up, just, if you don't need to adjust it, it should pick up. But there is maybe a handheld one there if you'd like.
Okay.
And just turn it on. And if you could introduce your board too, Bill?
Oh, they're gonna give us a check. I like that.
This is John Donovan over here, Tina Carr, and Emerson Smoker. We are here. May I tell a short story before I begin here? With
And
this?
Bill.
This
yes.
is real short. The Helping Hands, the shelter, has the thrift store. The thrift store had a Mom's Day sale last Saturday. There was a person came by at the sale, and he was looking around, and I wondered what he was looking for, and I finally went up to him, and I said, "May I help you?" And he said, "Yeah." He says, "You can." He said, "I just want to thank the Helping Hands." He said, "I came to the shelter about 2 years ago, or 3, whatever it was," he said, "and he said, I was strung out on alcohol and drugs, and he said, I was just really down and out. He said, I didn't have any place to go. I was sleeping in my van, and I was lost. My wife and I were both, just didn't have any place to go." And he said, "The shelter took me in." And he said, with the programs that the shelter offers, with the GED and the other various programs that we offer, he said, I now have a good job, my wife has a good job, and we're doing very well. And he said, I just want to thank the Helping Hands. And I, too, want to thank the council and Sharon. I want to thank you, because this is due in part for what you've done.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the Albany Helping Hands and the board, I want to just thank the city for the money that you have loaned us. This check for $150,000 is payment for the loan that you made to us several years ago, but it was spent quite a little spell. But this money went a long ways in housing and sheltering the homeless. And I have this to say. May we, Sharon and the council, may we continue to work together as a team, because we are in a battle, and this battle is with homelessness, and this challenge is there. We can debate this until maybe 12 o'clock tonight, but the challenge, after the dust is settled, the challenge is still going to be there. So thank you for partnering with us. From the bottom of my heart, the Helping Hands, the board, and we thank you.
Oh, and thank you. Yeah.
The public can see it, and it can be on camera then, too.
Yeah. I think the camera probably picked it up.
Nice job there, Vanna.
NRSTLE, oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, we really, really appreciate it. And mostly, if you think about it, to be able to come up with this amount of funds and to be able to, during the challenging times we've had. Thank you, Bill.
Well, that's
Thank
not
you.
half bad for a three-way split.
A lot of you folks here know Darren Lane, and this is actually Darren's father, if you didn't know. Yeah, so known Bill for a long time and knew Darren, didn't put two and two together at one time, but no,
He's one of the two brothers.
yeah. No, Helping Hands is vital in our community, and the homeless shelter provides such a needed service, and it really does alleviate a lot of the city's concerns that we have, a lot of the issues. They've been able to really help us out on a lot of situations, and we are so appreciative of the wonderful service that Helping Hands has given our community. And mostly it's not just a shelter. They are pretty much strong case managements taking place to work with each homeless individual and helping them to be able to move towards being self-reliant. And there's not too many shelters that provide the amount of programs that Helping Hands does. We're very fortunate in Albany, to be able to have a community that's really one to serve the homeless, not enable them to continue being homelessness, but actually to really focus getting them into housing. And we're very appreciative to Helping Hands and all their support. And so we really appreciate, too, for the payoff of the loan. But, yeah, thank you. And Stuart? Yeah.
Mayor, if I could ask, the City Council met in March and reviewed with Helping Hands provisions to modify terms of the loan in order to facilitate this payoff this evening. And I would ask as closure for that action if the council would be willing to consider a resolution accepting the payment as payment in full for the two loans.
Yes. So are you going to bring us back a resolution, or do you just want the council
Let's
to
just
make
do it by simple motion.
a simple motion? Okay. All right. Council, you willing to
So
do that?
moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. So yep, it's totally official. So the loan is paid off. Yep, thank you so much. Yep, thank you. So, okay.
Yeah, right.
So any other questions on that? Okay. So next on the agenda is some proclamations. And this one is Mental Health Month. And let me put her up here. So whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all people experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas promotion and prevention are effective ways to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and whereas there is a strong body of research that support user-friendly tools that all people can access to better handle challenge and to protect their health and well-being, and whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, and whereas with effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives, and whereas each business, school, government agency, faith-based organization, healthcare providers, veterans groups, and citizen has a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention efforts. And whereas the Lynn County Mental Health Advisory Board is emphasizing that there is no health without mental health by being involved with public service announcements, health fairs, public speakers, and various trainings regarding mental health issues. Therefore, I, Sharon Canopa, Mayor of the City of Albany, Oregon, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2014 as Mental Health Month in Albany, and call upon our citizens, governmental agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health conditions. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Albany to be affixed this 14th day of May 2014. And this was brought forward to us by Lynn County Mental Health, and I think there will be the Resource Fair is tomorrow, and there's probably going to be representation, maybe there at the Resource Fair. So yeah, the Heart to Heart Resource Fair is tomorrow. And it's a wonderful, wonderful resource group, so. Okay, next is another proclamation, and this is Preservation Month, May 2014. Whereas Albany is well known for its large and varied collection of historic buildings that date from the 1840s through the 1950s. And whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for economic development, tourism promotion, neighborhood revitalization, creating livable and sustainable communities, fostering local pride, and creating community character. And whereas it is important to celebrate the role history has in shaping our lives and communities now and in the future. And whereas New Age of Preservation, Embark, Inspire, Engage is the 2014 theme of National Historic Preservation Month, celebrated across America and sponsored by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And whereas Preservation Month provides an opportunity for citizens of all ages and backgrounds to embark, inspire, and engage in Albany's heritage and discover why Albany was Oregon's first Heritage All-Star community. And now, therefore, I, Sharon Canopa, Mayor of the City of Albany, Oregon, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Historic Preservation Month. And I encourage all citizens to take this time to appreciate Albany's many historic resources and to participate in activities celebrating our heritage. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Albany to be affixed this 14th day of May 2014. Okay, and Ann, is there any other activities for preservation, historic preservation going on this month?
In 2 weeks, we'll have the awards here.
Okay.
But there have been activities ongoing, and several of them are winding down, but there is a brochure probably on the visitors' website. It'd be a good chance to get on their website. They have it there, and we have some. I need to get some for City Hall, but been a little busy, and
I think there's been some downtown walking tours I've noticed.
Yeah, we had, those were this week, and there are a couple other events. There's a cleanup at Monteith House Saturday. Boston Mill Society is having an event Saturday, but I know it's the big pickup. So there are a couple other things throughout the month, and I do want to report that we had a really good turnout for the Heritage Tourism Conference at the end of April, so I think we're going a little light on activities this year because we did do a lot to host a couple hundred people here for 3 days.
That was a wonderful event, very
so.
well. I just heard great comments from a lot of the attendees, and it was wonderful hearing, what their thoughts were of our community. So, yeah, great job. Okay. All right. Next proclamation is Public Works Week, and that's May 18th through May 24th, 2014. Building for today, planning for tomorrow. Whereas the public works programs and services provided to our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as drinking water source, treatment and distribution, wastewater collection and treatment, stormwater management, street maintenance, traffic management, environmental and water quality services, engineering services, public transit, and airport. And whereas the health, safety, economic vitality, and livability of this community greatly depends on these services, programs, and facilities. And whereas citizens are encouraged to gain an understanding of the valuable work performed by the qualified and dedicated Public Works Department staff. Now therefore, I, Sharon Canopa, Mayor of the City of Albany, Oregon, do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th to May 24th, 2014 as Public Works Week in the City of Albany, and I call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public works employees make every day to our health, safety, economic vitality, and quality of life. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Albany to be affixed this 14th day of May 2014. Okay, all right. And Jeff, if you can be able to tell your department that we all recognize and really appreciate the service that they do provide for citizens of Albany. So,
Here, here.
Yes.
Except the mowing of my street.
Okay, so council scheduled business. First is communication. This is, oops, just a second. Revised agenda going here. Yeah, this would be accepting Javier Cervantes' resignation from the Community Development Commission. This is on page 6.
I move we accept the resignation, send him a letter of appreciation of service.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Next is business from the public, and is there anyone here that would like to bring an item forward? Okay, all right, not seeing anyone. Thank you for attending. Yeah, thank you. So next, we have first reading of ordinance, and, okay, Mr. City Attorney.
An ordinance to levy assessments against property specifically benefited by sewer, water connections, and the assessment of sewer, water, parks, and transportation systems development charges for property described as tax lot 2400 of parcel 11S 3W9DC, site address 2071 Spicer Wayside Southeast, and declaring an emergency.
I'll make a motion the ordinance be read second time in title only.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, second reading.
An ordinance to levy assessments against property specially benefited by sewer and water connections and the assessment of sewer, water, parks, and transportation systems development charges for property described as tax lot 2400 of parcel 11S 3W9DC, site address 2071 Spicer Wayside Southeast, and declaring an emergency.
I'll move for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Question?
Uh-huh.
These are outside the city at this point, or is this real close to where the edge of the city is?
This one would be, I think this part is annexed in, yeah. But the Spicer Wayside part that's north of Spicer is the part that's not annexed in.
Circle
city.
Drive.
Or Circle Drive, yeah, Circle Drive is not annexed in, so,
Good,
yeah.
thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other discussion?
Call the question.
Okay, all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Okay, council, next, item 2 is what you pulled off, so we will not be taking that one up this evening, and I believe a meeting was scheduled for...
Monday, June 2nd at 7 p.m. here in council chambers.
Okay, yeah. And does that work for everyone, or?
You will already be in the building for another meeting that starts at 5:15.
Okay,
That's the joint training with the Planning Commission and the Landmarks Commission, land use
so I
refresher.
had that down for the 9th then. I thought that was changed to the 9th.
There's another meeting on the 9th, and I can't remember what that is.
Okay, so yeah, because I'd already committed to greet some folks, visitors from Australia on that June 2nd at 5. So hopefully I can be here by 7.
Jeff,
So
can you help me
sure?
with, what's the meeting on the 9th?
I'm guessing that the meeting on the 9th is a joint meeting to cover stormwater quality.
That's right.
Okay, maybe you're right.
We had some shuffling to do a couple of weeks ago, and that's where we
Okay.
ended up.
Yeah, I had land use training and stormwater down, but yeah, we'll double check on all that.
Bring your visitors along, it might be a nice, interesting meeting.
You can get, it's like a barbecue place they're going to, so they probably would prefer it over our meetings. Yeah. Okay, so next would be item 3, and this is on ordinance on page 23. Would you like to have the first reading read? Okay, what, first reading read? Yep, okay.
All right, this is an ordinance amending the Albany Municipal Code, Title 7, by adding a new Section 300, Chapter 7.84, entitled Improper Use of Transient Shelters, and declaring an emergency.
Move to have second reading in title only.
Second?
Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, second reading.
An ordinance amending the Albany Municipal Code, Title 7, by adding a new Section 300 to Chapter 7.84, entitled Improper Use of Transient Shelters, and declaring an emergency. Sorry.
Transit.
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 Bus.
Transit. That was a
Transient,
Freudian slip,
not
wasn't
using
it?
transit.
That really was.
No transients in the transit.
We have a lot of transit.
We should be trained in our travail of the
Yeah,
transit.
I have nothing more to say.
Transit.
Sorry. I'm done.
Was there a motion or to?
I don't know.
No, I had a
Yeah, you
comment.
read it.
I don't think there was a motion to send it the second time.
Right, yeah,
And-
not a motion to adopt.
Did he finish it?
Right.
So I had a comment.
Oh, okay.
I mentioned Monday in the work session, and I thought this was kind of overreaching, and it does seem extreme. So I studied it, I've read it 2 or 3 times, and it still bothers me, and I want to ask your indulgence here. The third paragraph, whereas only persons who are boarding, disembarking, or waiting for public transportation and have tickets, I think that's key. And then the next paragraph, whereas no person shall place objects, substance on the seats and will not lie down. And that applies to even ticket holders. So here's some violators, in my opinion, as I read the ordinance. You're waiting for somebody, you're sitting on a bench, they're going to arrive by bus or taxi or whatever. You don't have a ticket, you're a violator. You're waiting for a taxi, you're a violator. Because down in bottom of the page under item number 1, it's only for use of the city approved city bus service. So you live in an apartment, you call for a taxi, hey, I'll be outside on the bus bench, you're violating the ordinance. You're out on a walk, sit down to rest, that's a violation. School kids walking home from school, it starts to rain real hard, you duck into the shelter, sit down, that's a violation. Even a ticket holder can't set a drink on the seat next to him without that being a violation, as I read this. We mentioned yesterday or Monday the mother with 2 kids, one of the kids lays down, that's a violation. So what bothers me is that there were comments made Monday that, oh gee, that's not who we're concerned about and we would never ask them to stop that behavior, you know, that's not the problem. So it gets back to the issue that the city attorney has made several times of an ordinance that's selectively enforced. And I don't know the history. Nothing was explained in terms of if anything has been tried yet, such as simple signage that these buses or these seats are for customers. Please be courteous. I did notice in looking at some of the shelters that even though it's a bench, it's divided by metal bars, almost like hand rests, so it would be tough and uncomfortable to lay down on them, so I'm not sure that lying down on them is a big problem. But it seems to me, once again, we've got maybe some unintended consequences with the subjectivity of that, oh, well, we're not going to enforce it because that isn't the problem, or that's not the person we're concerned with. It almost seems like we've leapt past several other options of how we might deal with the problem, and this is almost the last resort.
Jim?
Councilor Coburn brings up a good point when he notes that I have consistently discouraged you from anything that would smack of selective enforcement in your ordinances. And what I at least was trying to say at the work session on Monday is that I think there was the example, when we were talking about Wes's example of somebody spitting on the sidewalk and they had glass in their hamburger and they spit that out. What I am suggesting is reasonable discretion in interpreting whether or not somebody violated. I agree with you that we should not be selectively enforcing. We should not be making decisions based on who it is. We should not be making distinctions based on what they look like. This ordinance, if adopted, will put a squeeze on legitimate, law-abiding citizens. There is no question. If we enforce it uniformly, it will. Unfortunately, sometimes, I think in the judgment of the police department and in the judgment of my office, that the problem is so significant that we cannot prevent the abuse, even-handedly, without also inconveniencing our own people. Let me give you another example. We talk about U.S. sanctions on Russia right now, economic sanctions. And the President and administration have talked about being reluctant to go to the next round of economic sanctions because it's going to hurt Europe as well as Russia. But at some point, if the problem is so extreme, you're willing to take some pain in order to prevent a harm. It's your political judgment whether or not the harm warrants the pain. I have no opinion on that. That is for you to decide. But I think that it is certainly the intention of the city attorney's office to encourage even enforcement, even when it will pinch a law-abiding citizen, in order that we be even-handed when it is keeping off of the facilities those who are abusing it and who are frightening the patrons to a point where they're not going to use our facilities. So that's my take on it.
And I don't think there's any secret about what this ordinance attempts to deal with. It doesn't attempt to deal with people, any person, ducking into a shelter to get out of the rain. It attempts to deal with people who are basically camping out in the shelters, which is a fairly small percentage of the total population. I mean, most people don't desire to spend long periods of time in a bus shelter. And the problem is that there are enough of them that do, that they are infringing on the opportunity of people who just need to use the bus shelters for their intended purposes. And this ordinance gives our police department a tool to address a fairly significant number of complaints that we've had about people camping out, if you will, in transit shelters. That's all it does.
And I know that the police have tried less intrusive methods to encourage people to move on, have asked it, and unfortunately there is a segment of the population, and you've heard this again and again, about a very small percentage of the population generating a large percentage of the problems. And those folks know when the police can compel behavior and when they cannot, or they learn it very quickly. But again, it's a judgment for you to make on whether or not the problem is severe enough to be willing to bear the burden that it will create for the community, because it will.
Hey, Rich? And then
I understand Bill's perspective, and I agree that if this is selective enforcement, I mean, it should be selective enforcement from the perspective of if you have someone doing the wrong thing, it should be enforced against them. I'm wondering if maybe we could get our legal counsel to wordsmith it. If there is I understand what you're trying to do and I agree with it. I also understand that, if Floyd is waiting for his wife to come in on the train and the train's late, I mean, you are then spending too much time in the shelter and I don't think it'd be a good idea to have the homeless guy who wants to be there all the time point and say, yeah, but he did.
Well, I'm happy to make any changes that the council wants, but understand that it is difficult to make some of these changes and have the ordinance practically enforceable. If the misuser knows that all he must say is, I'm waiting for a friend to arrive, and he doesn't have to tell the officer who that friend is, I will have the burden in city court of proving that he was not waiting for a friend. When I prosecute, I have to prove that he has committed the elements of the offense. If there is an exception for waiting for a passenger, then I cannot simply say he was at that location for X amount of time. I would have to prove that he wasn't waiting for a passenger. I can't prove that. So there is no question that, again, that's what I get back to the same point. It will pinch. It will have unfortunate, unintended consequences. I don't hide that. But they are there because otherwise I can't prosecute these guys. I've got to prove, if we criminalize this behavior as a misdemeanor, I've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they have committed the violation.
I think Floyd and Ray, then Bessie.
In reviewing, or in preparation for drafting the ordinance, I wonder how other communities have addressed this, that have much larger transit systems than we do. I have not heard that discussion. I understand the problem, but I also appreciate Bill's view of the unintended consequences. And this road has been plowed before, and I'm not sure how others have done it.
This largely came from Metro, who has the largest bus transportation system in the state. That's what we were using and we tried to pare it down and take out a lot of stuff, yes. Now, but again, we don't have to, just because Portland did it, we don't have to do it that way. So and I don't think there's a particular urgency. So if the council wants to discuss further and explore ways to mitigate the harms, I'm certainly willing to do whatever you want, as I'm sure the chief is. We don't want you to do something you don't want to do.
Well, I guess I want to find an effective way to deal with the problem, but I also do not want to overly alienate our citizenry at a time when we're asking them to be our partners in a lot of things.
I think the alienating is happening, has been happening.
I
Why
agree.
can't you do something about
I agree
this?
with that.
That's the alienation we're experiencing, and,
I just don't want the kickback being worse than
yeah, well, and.
the problem.
Exactly, and, you know, we certainly have the opportunity to do nothing different than what we have done. I mean, you know, that's.
Well, the other thing you might consider
less
is,
work for.
you could adopt this ordinance, put it in effect, and direct staff to bring you back a report that would include what action the police have taken, whether or not it's working, that would direct us to make inquiries of patrons on the bus system at whatever interval you suggest, because I think I know I'm very sensitive to the concern that Councilor Coburn is raising, because it is going to have some unfortunate consequences. And there's no reason that you can adopt an ordinance one night and you can repeal it another. So we would be happy to bring you back a report. I think, wouldn't that be okay, Chief, if you choose to give it a try?
So Ray and then Bessie.
I have
So
no qualms in supporting this ordinance, because by the design and the intent, we are trying to mitigate some unwanted processes happening in some of those bus shelters. And my perception is the only time there would be those unintended consequences, as have been brought up, would be if the police in and of themselves chose to make that distinction when they were trying to enforce it. So does it become selective enforcement? Absolutely, that's its intention, and I have no problems in supporting it.
Okay, Bessie?
Well, when we're talking about the train station, are we talking about any of the just benches that are around there? I mean, I can see that the bus stops, they're covered. Okay, I can understand that, but, you know, I've been in Albany for many, many, many years, and you guys have too, but I've never had the need to duck into a bus shelter to get out of the rain. You know, so I'm thinking that maybe it's, go ahead with the ordinance and give it a try.
Well, the definition is intended, and it specifies that it's going to only be those shelters and those benches, uncovered benches, which are accessory to the transportation system. So if you're sitting on a parked bench, this doesn't apply.
Yeah, but it's the open benches by the train station there, because I think that's the only
Yes.
kind they have, right? All right.
Covered and non-covered, which are related to bus or train transportation and the train depot.
I just want to
So it
have
is
the
the train depot.
citizens.
The train depot and the bus transit shelters. For example, you've got one next to the old city hall. That would be, the law would apply there as well.
So if I'm waiting for somebody to come from Los Angeles, and I'm waiting for the Amtrak, and they're 4 hours late like they often are, I'd have to go out and walk around every hour or so to see.
My guess is you'd be waiting in your car, parked on the street.
You'd probably go home.
Yeah, you might want to go down to the restaurant and get something to drink.
Yeah. Odds are someone will sit
How far
still
do I
for
have to
4
go? I
hours.
guess I could go to the Depot Cafe,
Yeah.
have a beer.
There you go.
But you're right, I'm not going to give the answer that, no, we wouldn't
Waiting, I'd
enforce it
rather
in
stay
that
in the
way.
depot.
Yes, that is a place that it will pinch, it will have an unintended consequence, because I need an objective standard by which I can hold someone who doesn't have a good explanation accountable. But it's not going to be based on whether or not the police like their explanation. If there is a law, we will do our best to enforce it uniformly.
Yeah, Rich?
What concerns me is the fact that you can't judge the book by its cover. I mean, there have been a couple of times in my life when I met someone, as a matter of fact, both of them were introduced to me by my father. One of them was Francis Cheney, and he looked like he just stepped out of the gutter. Comes in, bib overalls, tobacco juice, that man's worth $190 million, owns Cheney Redwoods. Well, yeah, same kind of situation happened in Roseburg with Pappy Ford. I mean, if you see him when he is out, well, I don't know, if you saw him when he was out among, he was an old logger. And, if someone is sitting there and they look like they're kind of tacky, ratty, I trust that the police are going to make the correct, do the correct questions, but there have been a couple of times in Roseburg when someone didn't do the right thing and a police captain got called, and all of a sudden they were apologizing.
Well, and I got to make clear something. I don't want to create a confusion. If the bus was, or the train was 4 hours late, there would be an inquiry made about why somebody is there, and there would be an excuse for the violation, just as somebody's going 60 miles an hour in a 55, and the policeman stops them, and he sees that the woman is pregnant, and they're racing to the hospital. Nobody's going to get a ticket in that circumstance. And it's not because of selective enforcement. It's going to be because there is a reason that there's not an intent to violate the law. On the other hand, it doesn't matter whether you look like a bum or you look like a president. If there is no explanation for why you're hanging out at the train station, you're going to be treated the same. I hope.
Right. So, Chief, did you have any comments?
One comment I was going to make is for the bus shelters, someone was asking, did we do anything to help mitigate this? Well, the benches were pulled out of there, several of them, because of the issues that we had, but all it did was it created more area for more people to camp out in. So it made it actually worse than better. So we would like to be able to eventually put the benches back in there for the patrons to use.
Cameras up. We put a camera up at the one out at Fred Meyer, I believe, at one point to monitor it, so that because we were getting so many complaints about people choosing to basically live in the shelter.
Yeah, and it really makes it hard if we can't enforce it, the patrons of the bus system, because then they can't use the shelter. So, and that's what the shelter's there for.
Isn't that...
Actually, there hasn't been a motion yet, so we can't call the question. No, Mary, we didn't have a motion. Yeah, so we need a motion.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm sorry. I was just going to make just a statement that this is kind of the same fact as always. A small amount of people that's why we have the laws, for a small amount of people that make it bad. The other ones are just fine. It has to happen. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Okay, Ray, did you
Move for adoption of the resolution?
Okay.
Ordinance.
Okay, is there a second? No.
I think it needs
Well,
tweaked.
I'll second it. We'll see what
Okay.
happens.
All right. Dan, any more discussion? Okay.
I would like to make sure that as the Public Works Department puts the benches back and then reviews the others, that we do some of the things that Bill talked about. Have adequate educational opportunities, signage, maybe use benches that aren't quite as comfortable for sleeping purposes they are for setting purposes, and make it more difficult.
And do some of the things that City Attorney mentioned, that we could always, revise it going forward at any point in time based on...
Well, that's a separate process.
True.
Yeah, Public Works, as they have those shelters in place for their purpose, we need to make sure that, as Bill said, maybe they have armrests so that you're not laying out 6 foot of bench space and you got 2 foot per seat. So that's an issue of selection of equipment. And then put up signs that discourage people that they are intended for the use of the public using the transit systems.
And I think the idea of having a report maybe after, 2-3 months would be nice to see how it's going, how it's working.
Yeah. Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, could we get a roll call?
Olson?
No.
Collins?
A reluctant yes.
Johnson?
Same here, yes.
Kellum?
No.
Hopsinski,
Yes.
No.
3-3.
Okay, and I would be glad to support it, so yes. Okay, all right. Motion carried, so, all right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, next, council, is you have adoption of the resolution, and this is directing the use of litigation settlement proceeds for the development of a request for proposals to prepare a preliminary design for a downtown fire station. And I think we have retired Sheriff Burright here. Did you want to say anything? Yes.
Thank you. And I don't know where Senator Morse is. He was supposed to be here tonight, and I sent him a note asking if he was still coming. And I hope everything's all right, but I haven't seen him.
There is a Blazers game going on, so I mean.
He might be the smartest one in the whole place.
Yeah, really.
And a nice, beautiful day today, so
Yes.
so we thank you for coming.
That's all right.
Shows how dedicated you are.
By the way, I got to say, if I were teaching a government class, I would have loved to have had them here to listen to the last discussion.
Oh.
I mean, that was really, it's a fact, this is what government's all about, and all the pros and the cons, and you were all right. So, interesting. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that, and I know that Wes has been speaking with you, and I assume probably Floyd has as well, and you have not been in a vacuum when it comes to the work of the committee that's been looking at the fire and police stations. And I believe you've been getting our minutes and things in your packets, War and Peace, every week. And thank you.
Very well done minutes.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you so much to Marilyn on behalf of Frank and the entire committee. She's just a gem and has been so great to help us out, so thank you for that. Frank and I actually originally had intended not really to come before you until we had an entire package ready, everything done. And then, as it turns out, some weeks ago, the committee, when they were working on the fire department position, made the consensus finding that they wanted to move forward with a design firm to go out and recommend you to go out and get conceptual drawings and a good cost estimate and take it on from there. And knowing that it would be a several-month process, just from my old life, I know that works. I talked to Wes and asked if perhaps he'd want to chat with you about it and maybe start the wheels in motion. And so really, I think that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight. You should, in your packet, have the fire department recommendation as to what the committee's findings are with that particular building. I'd anticipate that you'll probably get at least two more before we're done. One will be the police departments, and with some luck, we might wrap that one up tomorrow night. The next one will be a conglomeration of all the issues relating to both sites, the funding issues and some tough things to deal with. So in your packet anyway is just the fire department piece. As I started to say, Frank and I were going to wait till the end, but the committee thought, and they were right, that we didn't want the public to misunderstand and think that the council was doing something off on a tangent without hearing from the committee. And so I think that's a good point. What you're doing tonight is right in line, hopefully, with what you're doing tonight, right in line with what the committee is recommending. And so we appreciate all your support, and is that it?
So is there questions for the sheriff? Yeah.
Well, I want to say thanks to the co-chairs for taking on an incredible task, more hours than probably what I had anticipated, and probably a little more difficult than I had anticipated, and also to the members of the committee, because I've sat in on the initial meeting, and I was invited to one other meeting to address a specific issue, and just to watch the discussion, the debate, and the consensus-reaching process, I think is really good. And so all the issues are on the table. But I do have a couple of questions we might clarify. One is, what's the expectation of the committee in review of the RFP itself? Or once we have the drawings in, what do they expect their role to be?
As far as the reviewing the RFP, I believe what they're after is they would just like to see it, to see if it encompasses what they've talked about up to this point.
So before we send it out, send it back as a final run-by, saying, is this what you told us to do?
That's what we asked you if you would do. Yes.
Yeah. Better
Yes.
choice of words.
That's right. As far as the second part of the question was the...
Once the conceptual drawings are in?
We've actually talked about that a couple of times, and I think it's probably fair to say we've got a member or two that wants to be way more involved than some of the others. But at the very least, what I heard was that we all would like to be involved to the extent that the public is. You know, when you have an open meeting where you're going to be talking and displaying the drawings perhaps for the first time, or asking for input from the public as to what they look like and is this okay, the committee would appreciate being involved in that.
Okay.
And I think it would be a very good also, when you get the drawings back and your cost estimate, if they could be run by the committee and let them take that last look. And my hope is that they would see them and say, yep, we have a product.
There are a couple of processes that the committee hasn't looked at, and one is the public participation in addition to the committee work, but the other is, particularly on the fire station, having a couple of meetings with our Landmarks Commission. I would assume that the commission or the committee would have no problem with us including that within the scope of the work that the architect is to do.
I don't think there's any problem. We know we're dealing with a historical building there, the old Dodge dealership and so forth, and you're in a historic area.
And another one in terms of potential structure of an RFP, particularly given the timing question you just brought up, you might have recommendations on the police department in a short time. I can visualize an RFP being structured with option A being, we want you to look at the fire facility. Option B is we want you to look at police facility, and option C is in the event that this firm wants to look at both of them and give us a better deal. You don't have a strong opinion as to the structure of how we address that, do you?
I don't recall the committee really having issues with that. What little it's come up is, my recollection is that you may or may not want the same design firm doing both types. Right. You know, it depends who you get showing an interest, but a person who's really good at fire departments may or may not be good with police departments.
Mm-hmm. And that's why option A or B can be a standalone, and then option C would be, in the event that you find a firm that is really skilled in doing both police and fire, there might be some real economies of scale there. But we would still retain the option of selecting one that's specific to fire and one that's specific to police.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not all architects can really, not all of them are, have a lot of experience in historic buildings. And we really found that out when we were doing the carousel building. And because all of a sudden the architect just kind of didn't want to really focus on a historic building, and ended up, the carousel folks had to switch architects. So I think that's probably going to be a part of that RFP, is making sure somebody does have experience in a historic building, so you're not having to go out seeking, getting designs back, and then all of a sudden we have, our historic, advocates and wonderful folks we have in the community kind of have an uproar over it. So that right architect will be kind of crucial for this RFP. And you're totally correct. Fire probably would be totally different than the police department, because it would just be, two different. When you're having a historic building to non-historic, can be different architects.
Could be.
Yeah. So.
But to be clear, there's only, my understanding of where we are is there's only two issues related to historic buildings, and that is the old building to the rear of Hasty Freeze, and do we want the new facility to have an historic view?
Yeah.
Because it's clear that the existing structure gets demolished. Yeah, it's a
Right.
1948 structure, and it comes down.
Yes.
Right, and but the new structure will want to
It's-
fit in with the
It is not
historic
historic, but it should
district.
fit into the area.
Yeah, just as Willamette Community Bank did, the Wheelhouse did, new buildings in downtown have kind of brought in some historic features to it, so, and kind of, she knows probably every single feature that, a newer building can end up putting into their design, but, yeah, so.
Are we putting any kind of dollar figure limitation on how much this RFP potentially could be if we're taking it out of the
Yeah,
litigation
that's-
funds, as to what this may, 200,000, 500,000, $1 million?
We won't know until they submit their proposals.
I think the discussion was that, from among the committee, that they were looking in the range of perhaps, or with a ceiling perhaps as high as a couple $100,000.
Couldn't hear you, Wes. How much?
A couple $100,000, perhaps as much as that, to do.
And a lot of that work would be work that would have been done in the normal process of a preliminary design anyhow. So it's not a duplication, or it's not a wasted effort. It just comes at a different step in the process.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that has been the discussion. We do not want it to be wasted dollars. It would have been done anyway. We just very strongly feel that the public needs to see what it is we're talking about.
And using that number, that was just that, I think I wouldn't say it was pulled out of the air. I mean, we have an architect and we have an engineer that do this kind of work serving on the advisory committee, and I think that's a number that maybe one of them used. But as was stated earlier, we really don't know until we complete the RFP, which will show the scope of work, and then the team, whoever responds, will say, well, this is what we charge for doing what you've asked.
Okay, Bessie?
I just want to take this opportunity, I told Dave earlier, but to thank you and Senator Morse for your dedication and commitment. I mean, like Floyd said, this turned out to be a lot more than I thought it was going to be. And to keep on, and I know it's probably sometimes like herding cats, but you got them all together, and it's just plus for Albany that you took your time to do this, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to dot every I and cross every T, and make sure that we get the best of all possible designs. I'm kind of wondering how long it's going to take, because I hear that, and it's through the grapevine, I don't follow business stuff, but I hear that interest rates are going back up. And or money people have any idea what the track of this interest rate might be?
Well, I think there's no way to predict interest rates. They're actually staying fairly low.
Oh, are they?
They're rising, but
okay.
they're not skyrocketing up by any means. Maybe a bigger concern is what's happening with construction costs, which are going up at a very rapid rate.
Well, yeah, I noticed the bids we got on the streets here, that they're higher than what our engineers thought that they might be. So,
And we're hearing that across the board, that the construction costs are rising. To do this RFP, I believe the timeline from Stacy Belcastro, who's sort of been helping us, the fire and police chiefs were with this, that they're not expecting a response until like January, just to the RFP, and that doesn't speak to the work that's called for in the RFP. So it takes time.
January?
Was that what I heard?
I haven't discussed timeframes. I know she was working, when I came in for this meeting, she was still working tonight, trying to put the finishing touches on the fire RFP. So we should be able to get that out, but I don't know what the schedule is for letting it and returning it, but it shouldn't take 6
7
months
months?
for a response. to the
Yeah, I don't know. This
July.
Just what I had heard, and we can certainly check on that, but it's going to take some time. I mean, first of all, to get to get the responses to the RFP.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know.
And then to actually do the work that's called for in the RFP. Maybe they were anticipating that they wouldn't get the work done until January. That may have been the timeline they were talking about.
I'm just kind of thinking that we have to think of one of two things. Either our appetite for the size of the building may have to shrink, or we're going to have to ask the public for more money the longer we wait to get the thing going.
Well, at this point, I would let the committee work its magic and see what we can come up with.
In response, I agree with you. But our belief is, and everyone we've talked to says, this is work that would be done anyway, even if you had the money in your pocket at the moment. You need to, this is part of the process of the design of the building. And so it's not wasted time from that regard. And plus, it's another reason why approach Wes early, knowing that they weren't quite done yet. And if they approve the recommendation that we have drafted tomorrow night, you're going to get a similar recommendation for the police department with the caveat that a lot of things have changed with the PD and the program design document since it was last done. So we're recommending that have another look taken at that with the hope, our belief is that the square footage will come down. And our next meeting tomorrow night and the meeting after, and hopefully we'll be finishing up soon, but it's the whole funding options and.
Sounds like time is of the essence, and I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and the last question I had was, we're taking money out of our settlement fund. Do we plan to pay that back out of the money that we asked the voters for?
That would be a council decision. We had originally, the council had voted to make settlement proceeds available to this project. But if you said, no, we want to preserve those dollars, you could ask for, a larger amount in your bond. Council choice.
I would sure like to see it be a fund that gets paid back. That's my view.
Purely your decision.
You still got a question?
I have a concern about the Historic Committee being involved any more than as an advisor, because the building that's there that's coming down is coming down. I mean, it is, however historic it is, and, it's a block of concrete.
I don't think there's any concern about the existing.
Yeah, I don't think this Landmark Commission is at all concerned about it. I think what you've just described is, I think, what the envision of their involvement is, just having some, and it's really the same involvement that any citizen or group of citizens would have in the review of the new building. But of course, there is a role for them to play in the old Dodge garage, which is considered a contributing historic structure.
A little shed-looking thing in the back.
Shed thing in the back.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's an issue.
Right.
Well, I'm just concerned that in the past, there have been times when, if they get involved and it has to run through them, sometimes there are a bunch of hoops that have to be jumped through, and that goes back to Dick's concern. Every hoop is extra time, and every time is extra money.
Well, and that actually, we shouldn't have to worry about it if the RFP ends up being right and the architect's able to listen to what that input is of what the citizens want to see for design. They can make sure they add those features in, to that design. So if you get a good architect and they know what to look for that certain historic fabric to add to it.
That also is included in my concern. Mm-hmm. How much is enough architectural oldie stuff? Because it's obviously not like, not matching something that was there before. Anyway, you've heard my concern.
Oh, yeah, Bill?
I'm concerned about the money, and I've been pretty outspoken that I'm a big fan of the design-build concept for just about anything, buildings and so forth. I keep citing the example of Samaritan's Hospice facility, which was design-build. I'll give you my opinion because I don't have the facts, but I doubt they spent $200,000 on a conceptual design. If you stop and think about what we're looking for in terms of a fire station building, this historic factor is merely for the facade. What are the outside materials, possibly shape of windows, doors, that type of thing. In its essence, it's a fire department. And I really think that one of the factors that we should focus on, since it is the Pepsi settlement funds, is that we figure out a way to limit it to local architects only. And Sharon, you mentioned we want in the RFP, we want to make sure they have some experience in historical, so forth. They can certainly go out and hire somebody to assist them with that element. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, I think since it is settlement monies, we can do that. We're not bound by public.
I think you're mistaken.
Oh.
The source of the money doesn't matter. The law with regard to public contracting is the same regardless of the source of the money.
All right, well, I stand corrected on that. I thought I'd heard or we had discussed at one time that that was not the case. So,
Yeah, and Bill, I wouldn't, at this stage, I wouldn't get hung up on the number, and I apologize for even throwing out a number. I believe that number was used, at least by somebody in the committee on one or two occasions. I haven't seen the work of our staff committee and what they've put into the RFP, which will determine the price, and it could be, I could be way off on the estimate. Again, I was just quoting what had been discussed.
The carousel was a lot less, and that was a very challenging one because there's not too many carousel buildings that are built, so I would imagine it would be
But
less.
they did want more than just a rendering. They wanted elevations, and there was some more programming work that they wanted to have done, so it could be more, again, it's probably not productive to try and estimate what the cost would be.
So council, you have a resolution on page 29.
Move for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right.
thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
No additional comment on the
Right.
resolution, Mayor, but, maybe a comment to the city manager for staff is we do want to move this through quickly and get it moving and get some responses back.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, council, next is community development block grant plans. This is the plans that we did have the public hearing on. And Ann, did you have more comments? These were kind of routine resolutions, but did you want comments first?
Well,
Yeah.
we have not received any further public comment, so that's good news, I think. And then I did notice in putting this data into the HUD system, a correction that is on page 86 of your council packet. It's page 2 of a project summary for next fiscal year, 2015. Jackson Street Youth Shelter, there are 2 projects that they're doing, and I put the same project in both fields, and I just wanted you to know I've got a sheet that has the correct wording if you'd like me to pass it around, that the project on the second page, on page 86, third row, is actually street outreach and case management of homeless and at-risk youth. And I just needed to correct that in the plan. So that was the one substantive error I noticed, and otherwise, we're ready to go. I think we're...
86.
Okay, and
on page 86.
Page 86, it's the third row of a table that continues onto that page. Jackson Street Youth Shelter, the project is actually not a shelter. That's over on the previous page. They're going to be doing street outreach and case management of our at-risk youth, and there are hundreds of them. So that funding is going to help with expand their services in our area. I just had the same project listed twice in the same table, and that correction Mary has that, and that, I just wanted to clarify that so that you knew about it, so I can put the right version on our website, and
Okay.
that's it. Thank you.
So, city attorney just said that we can be able to, in one motion, adopt all the resolutions.
These all relate to the same matter. They're not ordinances. They're part of a package. If you want, if you're comfortable with all of them, you can move to adopt them in a single.
So moved.
With
resolutions.
Yes.
With the amendment submitted tonight by staff.
Yeah, so it'd be resolution on page 32, 63, 100, and 134. And you, there was a move? Motion and a
as
second?
amended.
Okay, and
Second.
second, okay. Any discussion?
I seconded it.
Okay, got it. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. But there's not a resolution for item E unless, and that would be that you authorize me to sign the certifying documents as required by HUD.
So move. Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you, Ann. And you have spent a lot of work.
Yes, you have.
And this has been a whole new level of experience for her in dealing with these HUD documents. And I really, really appreciate. I know it's been real frustrating at times trying to, dot all the, every little dot of I's on there and cross the T's, and it's been a real challenging time, but you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
So, and really reached out to the community on really getting a very thorough plan for us to adopt, so yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, council, you have adoption of the consent calendar. Any items that you'd like to have pulled off this evening, or I'll entertain a motion?
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Next, on page 166, you have award of bids, and this is for Center Street and 16th Avenue rehabilitation. So, Jeff, did you have any comments on this?
I do, thank you, Mayor. So it was mentioned earlier tonight, and Mark also mentioned at Monday's work session at the budget meeting, we have two awards tonight, and we have been seeing our costs increasing on our recent bids, and you see that reflected in these two tonight. And so we obviously need to start adjusting our engineers' estimates to reflect what we're seeing in the bid climate. Much as when the recession came, our estimates were much higher than our bids ended up coming in. So I think the positive of it is it's likely a sign of a recovering economy. The downside of it is the costs on our projects are going up. So with this first award is for the Center Street and 16th Avenue rehabilitation project. We opened our bids on the 29th, and the bids range from a low of $455,526 to $616,930, and staff is recommending award of bid to the low bidder of Pacific Excavation of Eugene.
Is the speed hump still going to be replaced back on the project when it's reconstructed? Because I know there's several speed humps in this.
I'd have to go back and check with Chris, but
Okay.
there was no discussions about removing any traffic calming, so it would be a surprise to me if anything was coming out of it.
All right, just so it's put back, or we will hear about it from the neighborhood. So, okay. All right, council, what would you like to do with this item?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Okay. Yeah, Bill?
Just a comment, a kind of almost rebuttal to what you said about the speed bumps. I talked to a citizen that asked me to drive down Center because he thought that some of those bumps were maybe higher than they should be. His comment was, it seems like you should be able to drive over them at the speed limit without being, sent to the roof of your car. So while I don't have a problem with them going back, my only observation would be to make sure the design is correct in such a manner that, if indeed that's the goal. Now, maybe the goal is you want them to slow down slower than the speed limit without getting launched into your roof.
Obviously, a lot of it depends on your vehicle, too. If I drive through in my truck, I doesn't take very much to
Sure.
launch me towards the top
Well-
of my cab.
But I'll give you the example I've discussed many, many times, the one on Marion Street, and there's no interest in the city to fix that, but there's 3 speed bumps, and one of them is definitely higher than the other. Even our firemen and paramedics have indicated to go over there with an ambulance, and things are bouncing and
And I
flying.
wasn't trying to minimize your concern with that.
No,
So
no, but-
I'll make sure that it's going to be going back to current design. Anything that's going back in is going to go back to current design standards. So I will double check and make sure that we have our bases covered there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Bessie?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Go ahead.
when I first moved here, I lived in that area, and trust me, the neighbors, most of the neighbors want those speed bumps there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because, I mean, and whenever I drive over, I mean, you just slow down. I mean, you don't have to go speed limit. You can, it's called
Traffic calming.
traffic calming, like, which means slow down.
Well, and actually, now it brings back memories, because that was a part of the local improvement district, and because when we did that 14th, 16th Street connection, and that was the one condition, is they wanted speed bumps, so.
Well, weren't they put in by themselves after all that was done? Because I remember when I got on council, I believe is when they came, the neighbors came and says, we need something done, and so that's why they were put in.
They went through our traffic calming program process
Yep.
to get that,
Yep.
put in there, so, yeah. But,
Jeff, do you remember what the engineering news record number was that Mark shared on Monday? Was it 7.6%?
It was 7 and change.
Okay.
The year-to-year, I think it was either March or April.
Okay, so for the lay people, that means that based upon the index that this magazine keeps that tracks cost of projects all over the United States, they have an area called, up in Seattle, and they kind of track the entire Northwest, but 2 projects identical, last year versus this year, one would be 107% above the previous one. So when things are on the rise, time delays cost money. And I think that's what we're seeing here is a reflection of the bidding climate out there. Time of year they get bid, and there's several variables in there. But as we all know, anytime you're building a major facility, it's going to cost you more tomorrow than it is today, unless you have a recession going on. And in the magnitude of 7%, I had an email conversation with Wes the other day. If we were looking at that $20 million public facility for police and fire, that's about a $1.4 million increase in cost just for delaying a year.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Okay, council, on page 170, you have the award of bid for the Belmont Culvert emergency repairs. So, yep, Jeff?
Thank you again, Mayor. We have here a project that's was necessitated following the January 2012 storm event. We had approximately a 50-year storm event that caused a lot of damage throughout town, and part of that damage was wiping out this culvert on Belmont Avenue. We were fortunate in that a major disaster declaration was issued by the president, and that freed up some FEMA funding to help participate in the repair. The FEMA's authorized up to 75% of the total project cost. There are some limitations to that, so the major portion of the project will be funded by FEMA. We did open up our bids on April 22nd, and bids ranged from $484,100 to $574,109, and we are recommending award a bid to the low bidder, which is North Santiam Paving of Staten.
And, Your Honor, if I could just briefly, this project was raised at a public meeting, and the person that was raising it was being very critical and saying how long it had taken this project. First of all, the dates remind me that this event happened a little over 2 years ago, that we had that street back in operation within a few weeks, thanks to a good partnership with Benton County, We've been able to secure a fair amount of federal funding so that local people aren't bearing the cost of it. And yeah, it was actually Benton County that lent us the beams for the bridges. And you know, the replacement structure that's going to be put in will be a significant improvement over what we had there in the past. So rather than this being an example of a failed or a bad project, I think we should, personally, I would commend our Public Works Department for what I think is good work all the way around in making sure that the neighborhood was not horribly inconvenienced. They managed to quickly get the street back in operation. And secondly, in finding a solution that was cost-effective and managed to conform with the usual long string of federal requirements. Just some good work all the way around.
Thank you. I'd like to second Wes's appreciation for Benton County. We had a pre-scheduled meeting with them shortly after that event, and they immediately, just in commiserating over our efforts to recover from the storm, they immediately offered up their supplies, their staff, their equipment, got that back open for us at no cost for lending the bridge components to us, and at only at their actual cost to get it installed. So great deal of appreciation for them for that.
Thank you, yeah. Rich?
I may have been the person who said that.
No, it was not you.
Well, it sounded like me. Bottom line, what I have had a problem with is not the city or the county taking a long time to do it. What I have a problem with in these kinds of situations is we, as a nation, are regulating ourselves into oblivion. And if you go back 1960, that problem with a couple of, temporarily fixed in a couple, 3 days. It wouldn't have been a good fix, but it would have been something so you get over it. The next dry season, it would have been fixed. And that's not saying that was a wonderful time. It's simply saying is we are, because of all the regulations that we are stacking on top of ourselves at all the levels, it means that we are hamstringing ourselves.
Okay. Any, is there a motion for this item?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion?
And I don't know how to spell that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, next.
Paid for it all or something.
So, yep. Next is on page 174, we got 3 appointments, and the first one is Chris Equinoa to the Community Development Commission. He is he's on the Human Relations Commission, which is the representation for this vacated position that Javier Cervantes had just resigned from.
I would move to approve the appointment of Chris Equinoa.
Yep.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Next is appointing Wendy, is it Ezel? Bessie, Ezel?
Ezel.
To the Planning Commission. Okay, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the appointment of Wendy Ezel to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, and next is appointing Ann Talip to the Library Board. And actually, a couple of these vacancies were from a couple of members that we ended up losing, so that passed away. So that's 2 of these appointments are replacing those positions. Okay?
I'd move approval of Ms. Talent on the library board.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, council, we got through the agenda. Next is business from the council. And Bessie, anything this evening?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Okay, and Bill?
Couple things. I share Counselor Kellum's frustration. My example is wheelchair ramps, handicap ramps. In my career, I've lost track of how many times they've changed the design. At one point, it required some imprinting using a tool that had not been invented yet. And people were scrambling to come up with some way to imprint a diamond pattern in the concrete. Some were stamping it, some were taking some expanded metal and rolling it and welding it and trying to roll it back and forth. It was just almost comical. The latest is we're on a project in Portland, and the curb around the wheelchair ramp is so complicated that the concrete guys have just kind of thrown up their hand. And so we absolutely can't figure out how to build this. And if they do get the curb built, then comes the ramp, and it looks like something designed for NASA to go to Mars. I mean, I wonder how we got to this point. I wonder how we ever got by with the basic ramp that served the purpose in the old days. And I don't think the problem is politicians. You know, it's a lot more basic than that, but anyway, that's my soapbox moment. The other issue is I saw where the city had a transit stop improvements project out for bid, and I started, read that in the Daily Journal of Commerce, and then I'm on a plan center looking at it, and hey, some solar flashing beacons, so I quoted that portion of the job. But as I'm looking on the plan center, and I'm a little bit fictitious because I don't know the exact projects, but here's a pipe bursting, here's a new water line, here's a new sewer line, and it's like, good Lord, Albany's got a lot going on, a lot of projects out for bid. And I think there might be a value in some notification in our packet every 2 weeks of maybe some of these projects that are out for bid. Number one, I think it's great news because we've got some money and we can do some projects, and I think that's encouraging, but it also maybe gives us an opportunity to be a little more knowledgeable of this, particularly if a neighbor says, hey, I see they're going to replace our water line or whatever, and you've said, yeah, that's right, we're doing it. So something for staff to consider anyway.
Jeff will make that happen.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Anything else to do?
Okay, Dick, anything?
Nothing.
Okay, all right, Rich?
I got a phone call from Suzanne. Many of you have met her. She had a Willamette Lane tour bus today. They went to E.E. Wilson and then came to Talking Water Gardens. And she liked some stuff, and she thought some other stuff was this, that, and the other thing. And I thought, hey, we're going to find out now. So where did you eat? Well, A&W down in Brownsville.
Oh, no. Tell her to take a higher class tour.
Willamette Lane. Well, and I guess we had the presentation this evening. It's tours. I know the hotelers love them and hate them. When they need them, they love them, and when they don't need them for a weekend, they hate them because the compression is awful. I was hoping I was going to get some ammunition, but it kind of turned out the other way. And that's all the news there is.
So who was it that contacted you? Suzanne?
Suzanne.
Significant other.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're Suzanne.
My Suzanne.
Oh, okay. And she took a tour bus on what?
Willamette Lane.
Okay.
It's like Parks and Rec here.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
There were 25 of them, and most of them, the ones that they want to, or most of them are retired. There, once in a while, there's someone who isn't, but, I mean, it's the local folks, I mean, we're not going to get anything from the local folks, because, well, you're going to go back home, you know.
What'd you think of Talking Water Gardens?
Well, she liked parts of it, she didn't like the smell.
Oh.
She thought, well,
Yeah.
what is that smell, what's that different? And I, well, where were you? Well, as we were going there, well, that's the sewer treatment plant. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Well, couldn't you have made it someplace else? I said, that kind of, well, you know, that is the, that is kind of the reason that it's there. It's
It's a low spot in the community.
all goes downhill. Well, and the conversation went downhill from there.
Yeah.
Did they turn off the Febreze misters today?
I have no clue.
Not aware of the Febreze alarm going off, so.
You know, when I said that Febreze thing you ought to go after, you ought to go call Febreze and suggest that you have,
revenue?
and market, hey, it would be perfect.
Look what we cleaned
Look
up.
at what we can do. You think you got a problem? Look at this.
We can mask it real well.
Blindfold them.
You know, be careful. I had experience 20 years ago with trying to mask odors in Salem during the canning season.
Oh.
It comes in raspberry, it comes in lemon, it comes in any flavor you want, and it doesn't really help.
Okay, all right, is that it, Rich? Okay, Ray?
That's it.
Nothing,
I think
Ray?
that's enough.
Well, we've been having fun here. Sad to say, the Blazers went down by
Yeah, they
22.
just went down. Yeah. That's okay.
Wow.
Great season.
104 to 82.
Great season.
Boy, so they're totally done, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
they were done when they started playing San Antonio.
They won one, yeah, so, okay. The only thing I have is, you know, Monday, a couple of the hotelers came to and gave you that, you know, handout memo. There was a lot in that memo that had a lot of assumptions, a lot of kind of misinformation. So Ed Hodney and I did meet with them this afternoon, very productive, really addressed a lot of their concerns. They really see, you know, sort of the, kind of the whole big picture and a lot of the history to a lot of our transit lodging tax. So what was agreed upon is that the Expo and the hotelers, the AVA, and our Albany Parks, you know, will get together periodically, kind of forming a group, and they will look to see what is the gaps, what can we look at, if there's other opportunities that we can look at for enhancing our tourism. So they were really pleased, wanting to be a part of, you know, looking at, seeing if there's any sort of, if we need to redirect focus at all on tourism. So they were really pleased to want to kind of join and start working together. They used to, in the past, it used to be called like the 5 J's or whatever, that kind of went away. This is just kind of re-bringing them back together on that. So it was very productive. And so the issues that you know, saw in the letter has all been addressed and all that. They have a lot better understanding of it, so yeah, so that's how that went today. That was it
Chairman,
for
I'd
me.
come on that. You know, when we had the meeting a week and a half ago or so, we raised that issue of the old 5 J's, and what that was the Jimmy, John, Janet, Jill, and Julie. There were 5 J's, all involved in some form of economic development, tourism, bringing people to Albany. That group was meeting to focus a marketing strategy and how to coordinate and identify and target.
Yeah.
That was a self-selected group that they kept scheduling meetings and nobody showed. So in our meeting, we had a discussion, and I expressed a very sound frustration that if you're going to complain, you better be willing to participate. And Jimmy, before that meeting was over, Jimmy had put out a schedule notice to try to reactivate that group, so I'm glad to hear the hotelers are buying it.
And I think Downtown Association was to be a part of it too, but, well, and even the hotelers mentioned, they used to have, and I can't even remember the name of their group, but just amongst the hotelers, that they haven't got, got together for several years. So they said, they've kind of dropped the ball on that. But what's hard is a lot of times their staffing will change. So you get used to the group kind of coordinating it, and then all of a sudden you got some staff changes. So they want to stay, refocused, and they want to be able to really be a part of, the tourism. So yeah.
Well, they do. They do have a group. The hotelers have a group.
Right, that's what I'm talking
And they did, well, I don't know, they heard that the Expo committee was meeting, and Leah called me and invited me to their hotelers group for a couple, and it was well, interesting, productive, I think. I'm sure they're going to continue to meet. Leah is on the Joint Expo committee to make sure that she can take information back if there is something that we generate.
So it went real well, and I kind of reminded him too, because they had mentioned, in that letter about the motor coach, tour buses, and I said that's just a piece of the overall, tourism that we do, but there was an initial meeting probably a year or so ago that Melody Johnson was there putting in the pitch, to all the hotelers, all tourism agencies, and I had attended that meeting. It was at Pizza King, and the hotelers came up to me and said, we need to move in this direction, and we need to bring in and have these motor coach rallies. So I reminded them today, I said, you guys asked us to go this direction. So this is what we did. We followed through what you requested. Well, seemed to kind of forget about that piece, and they did agree that, yes, this is a piece of the overall tourism. That is a benefit, so. So there was a few things that they needed to be reminded of, but it went very well. So they left from that, and Ed Hodney will get things coordinated with them meeting today. So Ed was wonderful. But okay, that's it that I have. Anything, Wes? All right, staff have anything? So the big pickup is Saturday, 8 o'clock at West Albany
High School.
Okay, how many are coming? So Ray, I'll be there helping check in. And is it supposed to rain Saturday?
Not until late in the afternoon, according to Mr. Smith and Weather Underground.
And we just might be safe on that.
Yep.
So, okay. So I'll be there before 8 o'clock. Okay, and then our next meeting is May 28th. It's a regular session, and because we've got holiday time coming up, and with that, we're adjourned.